A goal, Chris Billy, Huddersfield Town. The most famous goal of Chris Billy's life.
Is this the moment for Lee Fowler? It is. Take your place in Division 2, Huddersfield Town.
Ruby and Steve Simonson's boots now. He's missed. Steve Simonson clears the frame of the goal and collapses in a heap of tears. Huddersfield Town are promoted.
Mustafa Schindler has a chance to write his name in Huddersfield Town legend. And he takes that chance!
Hello and welcome to the Andy Takes That Chance podcast, your audio home for the pioneers of Northern football, Huddersfield Town. This past week, Huddersfield Town have appointed another new manager, and it's a manager and not a head coach, as Lee Grant is next into the dugout. And that's gravy wallowing, knee-high challenging, Gerrit forward in flat cap wearing Northern football. I've got Killer and Kosi with me to discuss Town's latest appointment. But firstly, who is Lee Grant? Lee Grant was born in Hemel Hempstead, but it was the Derby County Academy that he came through initially. He had a couple of loans at Oldham and Burnsley before moving to Sheffield Wednesday in 2007. 136 appearances later, he moved to Burnley again in 2010, where he again made over 100 appearances. And from there, he returned to Derby, went to Stoke, and then finally finished his playing career at Manchester United, where all good players go to have their career die. And it's Manchester United where he cut his coaching teeth, learning from the likes of Jose Mourinho, Ole Gunnar Solskjaer, and Ralph Rangnick before leaving a month or so after Erik ten Hag had joined the club. From here, Grant's role became more defined as he became the first team coach at Ipswich, where he coached the strikers and not the keepers, and was responsible for an attacking unit that amassed over 100 goals in the 22-23 season in League One, and then 92 the following season in the Championship, as Ipswich were the top scorers in that campaign and their first back in the second tier as they came second. He was a big part of the Ipswich success, was he? Or just a cog in a machine or a coattail rider? We're about to find out as he now branches out on his own to be Huddersfield Town manager. Okay, let's have a look at the chase then, Kosi. It's been 80 days from Town sacking Michael Duff to appointing Lee Grant. Many names were linked, and Grant wasn't mentioned until later in the process. Now, this doesn't mean necessarily that he wasn't at the forefront of Town's thinking from early on, just that Town managed to keep the names out of the press. However, it did appear to be a mission initially to try and get David Wagner to come back, and there was a real sort of deflation from Town fans on social media when it became apparent that David Wagner wasn't coming.
Yeah, well, not from me though. I'm never one for going back, to be honest with you. I know people will be shouting at me, Peter Jackson and
Mick Buxton.
Yeah.
Neil Warnock.
Yeah, Mick Buxton, Neil Warnock, and all did good jobs going back on that as well. But I think this was real. I didn't want to see it happen, Matt, to be honest with you. And to be honest, I think his stock's a bit higher than a lot of people think. So I was kind of glad that, well, again, a lot of this and buts, but if you believe what we hear, we chucked a lot of money at him to try and get him to change his mind. But I'm glad that if he'd have come for me for the wrong reasons, come for the money, come to, to me, it's kind of, he'd done his business that he needed to do in that as well. I wouldn't want to have had a situation for me where, where AFC Wimbledon was scoring the second goal and there's boos and there's 7,000 people on a foggy Tuesday night in November, and David Wagner stood there with his baseball hat on and having to listen to that. And I'm just one for not going back, Matt. I'm not doubting that it probably had enough to get us out of the division. I know you kind of, obviously we kind of say heavy metal football, front foot football, call it what you like under Wagner, but the football at times was palatable, shall we say. So for me, this was another reason why I didn't want to see him back on that as well, because I just think I didn't want to, after a diet of football and other football before, that's been pretty dull. God, there's criticism of David Wagner, but I don't know. I just didn't want to see it. I was not buying into it. There was so much silence. The social media stuff was painful, with people almost like begging, craving for him. We were seeing stuff on Instagram where he was in the country when they did in London, outside Buckingham Palace. So that means, he's coming up north, and a lot of nonsense spouted, like there is off season anyway, Matt. So for me, yeah, glad just keep the memory there. Maybe one day he might come back on that as well. But for me, I was surprised. I'd been very surprised if we'd have got him back, to be honest with you. But yeah, so I was glad he did come back, and wish him all the best in his next venture, which he'll be interested to see where he ends up.
Killer, you've got the world's smallest cup there for anybody that's watching.
Smallest what?
World's smallest cup probably goes with something else.
Right. I'm a gentrified bloke that likes a nice espresso on an evening. I don't want to be full up of oat milk before going to bed, Matt. So to get through the first town podcast of this season or the last one of last, we've not entirely cleared that up just yet. I needed a little bit of something to get through, because I thought we won't have to go back over anything anytime soon.
So Wagner wasn't coming. From the names linked, such as Ruben Selles, Brian Barry Murphy, Des Buckingham, etc., it sounded like Town were mostly interested in a younger manager, sort of an idealist rather than a pragmatist, someone who can imprint a style and push towards developing a culture around hard work and improvement. When you think of that, you think of Lee Clark, you think of Carlos Corberán, you think of David Wagner, who all kind of had their first major jobs. I know Carlos and David Wagner had other number one jobs at Dortmund 2 and in Cyprus in Carlos's case, but it was the first sort of major jobs that they had. But they were tasked with bringing in an identity, bringing in a culture, and for people to buy into it. And that appears that we're at that juncture once again. There's been a negative culture at the club. The experienced pros have now been pushed out of the door. For someone to come in and really imprint on this squad, Ipswich are going to be used as a blueprint for Huddersfield, whether Lee Grant likes it or not, whether we're anything like Ipswich or not. Ipswich, obviously, the pioneers of Northern football, but we're not going to be like Ipswich, but people are going to continue to go on about Ipswich, including us, because this is Lee Grant's only real job so far that we can fall back on, and that's his 3 years at Ipswich, where he was incredibly successful as part of a unit. However, we're talking about cultures, aren't we? So when you look back at when Lee Grant went to Ipswich in 2022, Ipswich had just finished 11th, 9th, and 11th. They've had 3 seasons in League One at this point, so they were slightly ahead of where we were in terms of having a supporter base a little bit disenfranchised. They were struggling in the upper mid-table region and not able to push through to the next level. And they tried experience in Paul Cook and Paul Lambert, and it wasn't working. And they turned to a young up-and-coming manager in Kieran McKenna. And then they had a large turnover of staff. And look at what they became. They signed 16 players that summer, including Freddie Ladapo. Leif Davies was key, as were Harry Clark and Marcus Harness. George Hurst came in on loan as well. But it was the players that they already had there that really improved under McKenna. You look at Hladky, Cameron Burgess, Wes Burns, and Connor Chaplin, for example. They really sort of kicked on to another level. And I think this is what Town are looking for out there. They're looking to really change this culture killer. They're looking for someone to come in and improve what's there, work with people, and the noises that have been made by Lee Grant in the interview that he did, more so than the press conference. It seems like those kind of things are marrying up slightly, and that's what.
Yeah, look, this is what American owners like to do. You can look at loads of different American sports. You look at NFL, you can look at NBA. And when a team's successful, what happens is that the coaches within it get picked off because teams want to replicate that elsewhere. And now, like you say, Matt, Ipswich, yeah, they're a couple of seasons down the road of where we are now, but there's similarities there. So if you're an owner and you're looking at a club today in League One and you're looking to try and copy another team, it's Ipswich who you want to copy, because obviously we'll get into later on the similarities and the differences. There are a few on both sides, but that's what you do. You look at teams that have done it before and the people that made that happen. And Lee Grant, on paper, is a part of what happened at Ipswich. Now, we know the culture at our club has been awful for the last few seasons. We've had so many different managers with different abilities, different talents, different traits, yet all of them, pretty much to the man, have said the same thing when it comes down to the culture of the squad. And now we obviously have a few sources here, there and everywhere, and we hear from the outside that there's issues with certain players and relationships here, there and everywhere, and unprofessionalism, potential, all sorts of stuff going on. And now it's a time for a restart, and that's pretty much what we've gone with. Managerial merry-go-round. We all know how coaches are picked, in that a chairman wants, first up, a hard-working coach, a guy that has been there before, done it before. And if that doesn't work, you go somewhere else, and you go somewhere else. And we've kind of gone through every other option. So we're back at the drawing board with having to bring in somebody who's inexperienced, but has had some sort of track record in a culture that we want to replicate at the club. And you can see that's what we're hoping that Lee Grant can bring in, Matt. And to be honest, from the first words he spoke, you can tell that there will be a different culture, regardless of how it works out in the long run. You can tell from day one there's going to be a difference.
Kosi, is that better than an experienced manager? I mean, Grant's got experience of being part of a successful team, like Killer's just alluded to there, but he's not led a team, and it's very different, isn't it, being part of a culture and leading a culture? Are there concerns? If so, could they be allayed maybe by the experience of backroom team? Because you wanted to bring up experience versus inexperience, didn't you, to bring up for this discussion?
Yeah, I'm naturally a cautious guy, to be honest with you, Matt. So I know I've said it before and I'll say it again because it was on record. I'm sure if you look back on a pod, but I was sad when Chris Powell's moved out for David Wagner, and Ben Thorns will never let me forget that as long as I walk this planet. But so I'm kind of one for caution and not taking a risk. So for me, I was looking for kind of track record, a bit of experience, but obviously you can point holes in many different appointments as well. But yeah, left field appointment, the number. I know we were saying we've got to get it right, etc. But what was it, 71 days before this guy was brought in? That, for me, that was a bit of an issue. But no one will care if he gets us out of the division at the end of the season. But to me, that kind of felt we'd been turned down. You should never take so long, should you, to get people in? And because obviously we're behind the eight ball already. Getting pre-season arranged and players in and stuff like that as well. But yeah, it was one of those when Neil obviously did his Radio Leeds interview the other day with Johnny. He was like saying, "How do you feel?" He says, "I don't know." And you know what? I kind of felt that for a few days and that as well. But as the days have passed, I kind of get a bit excited about it. But this is me all over, really. Just like to buy into it as well. I'm quite easily seduced. That's a word. I'm quite easily seduced by a good talker. So the Darren Moore thing was a struggle. The Fotheringham thing was a struggle. The Brighton Writer, I was all over it. And obviously, even Michael Duff, obviously, I was a big fan of his press conferences. I were there with my popcorn out every Thursday at 2:00, waiting for that. That's horrible music that you have to wait to start. But yeah, so man, it was like I would like put in his hands, mate, after that press conference and obviously the interview we did at the start as well. I'm old enough to remember him as a goalkeeper, and he was a good one, Matt. Sheffield Wednesday as well. And what you got to remember as well is like it's not just a matter of like that experience under McKenna. Obviously, he's worked. I don't know how near, but obviously he was there at Manchester United when Mourinho was there, and obviously I know some people were like criticising his name dropping. There was someone who described it as almost like, what was it, like a TikTok video? You know that when we unveiled him and it like kind of followed him on the day, it was almost kind of a YouTuber or a TikTok. This was from an older person on one of the groups I'm in and that as well. So obviously, I think we were trying to kind of sell him towards. But no, for me, experienced, I'd have gone with. But I've got to be honest, Matt, someone like Des Buckingham wouldn't have kind of inspired me, to be honest with you, and that as well. I think, don't get me wrong, I'm not saying everyone can win a promotion because there's a lot of managers that have failed, but for me, he wouldn't have been something that got me inspired and that as well. But obviously, Lee Grant, it kind of broke, didn't it, a little bit after the Barry Murphy thing. That was quite loud, wasn't it? And so I thought, all right, we're heading down this kind of way, as well. But yeah, very interesting. Like you said, it's all right for people to say, Matt, because some people have said it on my group. Obviously, Paul McKenna's been touted. Sorry, not Paul McKenna.
The magician.
Shane, Paul McKenna. Yeah, we need him.
Oh,
But we've seen it before, Matt, where Huddersfield Town have refused to let people bring in their own backroom staff and picked them. You know, a lot was said over Kevin Russell kind of staying around and stuff like that as well. We've got to let this guy bring in who he wants, mate. And there's no point saying, let's get an experience. And don't get me wrong, it'd be a bit, I don't know, not someone like a Warnock, but I'm trying to think some kind of experienced kind of coach and something like that as well. That, you know, I know people say Jackson and Yarrow and all that going back a bit, but to me, it's what Lee Grant wants, mate. It's not what Kevin Nagle wants, not what the fans want, not what Jake Edwards wants. It should be what Lee Grant wants as his coach. And he's bright enough, mate, to know if he needs an experienced guy there. Part of me thinks, yeah, McShane, and if it is him, and like, oh my days, you know, kind of what experience have they got? But I think there's no point, I just think, bringing guys in and then just like bringing other people in that they don't want, or not letting them have their own backroom people and stuff like that. To me, that's massive. It's like, you're going to do a job, do it right. So, yeah, what were the question again? But no, to be fair, I just think, yeah, experience would have been nice. It's brave, but the only thing I keep coming back to, though, thinking about it, it's like, this is like probably our last chance of a massive rebuild. So it's a huge thing that we can't afford to get wrong. I know we keep saying it, next manager, next city, but we can't afford to get this wrong. We've got the great chance. So part of me did think this is where an experienced person should be brought in to do it, and we've not brought it in. So it's like, oh my God, strap on your seatbelt, yeah, and enjoy the ride.
Just to go back to those, I think it's between 70 and 80 days, isn't it? It took us, but I believe we've probably had to wait for the Premier League season to finish first before we could announce Lee Grant. I would imagine that's why it's probably taken that long, and I'll be very disappointed after all that, Kosi, if Paul McKenna's not part of the backroom team. I think hypnotising them like Eileen Drury, Faith Healing and what have you, just for those that were around listening to football in the 1990s. But let's have a look at the man himself. When it became apparent that Lee Grant was coming, I got a load of messages of teeth gnashing and people in disbelief that we've appointed a goalkeeper coach. My one comment back to them was always just listen to him first before you make your mind up, because he actually speaks very well. When I first heard the name, I went and listened to some of his interview at Ipswich, and he did an interview with the FA, and I thought, do you know what? Great, he talks brilliantly. He does. He's done his first interviews now. He's done the first interview. He's spoken to the press. Like I say, he speaks very well. Maybe sometimes it sounds a little bit like Jake Humphries has swallowed a FA coaching manual at times, which is not always a bad thing. So I can imagine some things might grate on people given time if things aren't going particularly well. But that's the way. I think he sounds like a man with principles, a man with ideals, and I'm quite excited to see where it goes under him. For me, when you listen to him, Killer, you kind of get this. When you listen to managers speak, Michael Duff always sounded not quite in control, like he was trying to control the chaos, if you know what I mean. I liked Michael Duff a lot, and I felt like he should never have been sacked when he was, even though there was perhaps something behind the scenes there. But I wasn't in favour of that. But now there was that element where he was always like I said, controlling the chaos. Andre Brighton-Wright was very much the same. Darren Moore always kind of felt a little bit lost when you the Erminator, as Kosi tends to call it. But you always felt a little bit lost, didn't you? Or he felt a little bit lost. And we've not really had anybody positive to get behind. I know Mark Fotheringham tried. And as soon as Lee Grant said clarity a couple of times in that interview, it did send an alarm bell going. But I don't really think we've had somebody who speaks with such an authoritative way, with a clear, precise vision of what he wants to do. And how he speaks is interesting, Killer. I think it gives an insight into what he's going to be like, because he kind of compartmentalizes everything and he breaks every question down. He structures everything. and you can just see everything he does is kind of meticulous, isn't it? And I imagine from listening to him previously and listening about his body of work, etc., this is what Lee Grant's about. He breaks things down into smaller chunks, and he he kind of kills with kindness a bit. I noticed there was a little bit of Neil Warnock in there, how he spoke to Stephen Chicken and Jamie Rayner, and Kosi was right in WhatsApp, not to open the Wizard of Oz curtain, but Kosi mentioned that Jamie Rayner asked some great questions from radio leads, and Jamie did. Jamie was great, and I thought the way Lee Grant handled it was good, and the way he kind of then tried to not control them, but sort of treat them on a level with him and treat them with kindness was and get them on side was very reminiscent of something Neil Warnock used to do as well. And I just you just kind of get this feeling that this is a guy who knows how to control situations and control things in small chunks, Killer.
You do. Just for a little bit of background, now I've run a communication and marketing agency. I don't anymore, but I did it for 11 years. So I've worked in communications for a long, long time. And I thought Lee Grant came across really well, very, very well prepared. There's going to be no moment, I think, when he's coming to a pre-match conference where he won't be prepared and have an answer for absolutely everything. And he did it in a way that he can change the narrative without the questioner realizing exactly what's happening, I think, to avoid difficult questions. And now, again, that's another Americanism. And I can see very clearly how well he'd have being interviewed by Kevin Nagel, because it isn't actually anything to do with football tactics or football coaching, the communication that he's been showing. It's just really, really well done. And the thing is, Matt, not many football managers speak like that. I do think that might be for a little bit of a reason as well, though, because I think, remember, most footballers have come from poor socioeconomic backgrounds and get turned off quite a lot by listening to people talk in a professional manner. I think that's a potential issue that, if you've got a bad culture, could surface. And this is just something I want to get in here now, in case in a few months we have to come back to it and revisit it. But I thought he was very, very well prepared and answered questions like Jake Humphries would. I think that's definitely the way I look at it myself. He says a lot of things nicely without saying very much at all at the same time. And now, for me, Michael Duff nailed press conferences better than anyone we've had, even better than Warnock, because I do think Duff gave information to you in ways that didn't feel like it would give anyone else too much insight, but it felt real. It felt from the heart. It didn't feel over-prepared. And I do think that's what you're going to get with Lee Grant, which is great when everything's going fine. The problem I have it, and the little warning sign I have with all this, Matt, is I don't think it bears any resemblance whatsoever to what will go on in the changing rooms in between games, or when things go a little bit wrong. Training, you can tell it will be meticulous. He'll know exactly what's happening before. And like you say, Matt, going into the gym at 6 o'clock is a non-negotiable. He's one of those kind of guys, I think. And whilst a lot of us Yorkshire folk probably don't get turned on by that too much, you can definitely see there'll be some preparation. And considering what we've sat through and watched the last couple of years, you understand why Town have gone that direction and have gone for somebody like that, because there has been, especially over the last 15, 16 games of this season, when, like you say, Michael Tong's interrupting Worthington when it's coming to defending corners to send Chroma back up. There's been such a lack of discipline in all angles. You kind of understand the desire to get somebody in that is prepared and that does know what they're going to do and can handle themselves and make the club look really professional from the outside, because from day one when Kevin Nagel arrived, he wanted to professionalise the club. He wanted to bring it forward. And now we can look at the stadium and it looks fantastic, apart from whatever happened the last couple of days with Ken Davey and the Giants. But everything off the field has moved forward with the academy, with the 1908 club. I think Lee Grant kind of represents that pretty well as well. And I think the press conferences and the way he speaks epitomises how the club wants to go forward, really.
Okay, so going forward with the podcast, nice segue, Killer. I've been wanting to introduce something for a little while. So some people might remember, Killer, your debut on this podcast was as a phone-in. I can't remember what you would call that, really. Kind of like a phone-in guy, weren't you? We used to do a little bit which had 5 or 6 people would just phone in with their opinions, and we would play them. And I wanted to go back to that, and we're going to call it the TTC Squad. Most of them are on Discord, so remember, join us on Discord. You have to sign up to takesthatchance.com, and then you can access the Discord from there. And here we've got some of the guys have chimed in with their opinions, and this is what they've all had to say on the appointment of Lee Grant.
Hi, it's your boy, John Joe Voldemort, aka Johnny Mac from over the Irish Sea.
Is Lee Grant a good manager? I've got absolutely no idea. Up until a couple of weeks ago, the only thing I knew about Lee Grant was that he was a kind of okay-ish goalkeeper at championship level. Since he's taken the town job, though, I've watched his interviews and stuff, and he speaks well. But speaking well is, that's a very, very small part of the job. My main concern, however, is that Kevin Nagel is still the chairman, and that the systems that were in place when all the previous managers failed are still there. I'm very, very worried that we don't have a new sporting director, and it seems like we're working off the same guys that were identifying players for Mark Cartwright. So, all in all, what do I think is going to happen? Well, regardless of how good Lee Grant is, I don't think he can manage upwardly and downwardly at the same time. So I think he's got at least one hand tied behind his back whilst we don't have a director of football. So, as I say, regardless of how good he is, I just don't see us achieving the goals that we all want to achieve next season. I think that squarely comes back to Kevin Nagel. And as I say, I don't blame Lee Grant for that, just like I don't blame Michael Duff for it, and I don't blame previous managers for it. So, nothing changes unless nothing changes.
Oh, say, can you see, it's Percy Jackson's protector, Aidan Grover, here.
I can't speak for everyone, but personally, I think that Lee Grant is a lot more qualified than some might think, given the managers that he's worked under. And when you think back to it, I remember when Man United signed him, and people were kind of making it into a meme, like making it into a joke, because they hadn't signed anybody else that summer, and their first signing of the window was Lee Grant. And everybody was like, why are they signing this guy? But it was Mourinho that signed him to be a player coach, which I think should say something that Mourinho went out to get him. Then not only that, then Kieran McKenna goes out to get him. And look at what Ipswich do with him on the staff as an assistant coach, as an attacking coach. I just think when you combine that with how he said how he's been taking his coaching badges for a long time now, I think he really is a good candidate for us. I think it's a really smart hire from Kevin.
Is Lee Grant a good appointment? We'll find out over time. Really can't tell fully yet, but it's the kind of appointment that excites me. He doesn't just speak in sound bites. He talks really well and constructs a logical argument as to what he's going to do and where he thinks we're going to go. If we get the players in, then I think I'm really excited about the season. So fingers crossed.
Hi guys, Freddie Cocker here, founder of Vent, a mental health platform where everyone, but especially men and boys, can open up about their mental health issues, break down stigmas and start conversations. Just sharing my quick thoughts about Lee Grant and his appointment. Personally, I'm very excited by it. I know there was a lot of clamour for Wagner, but I think it's not great to kind of dine out on nostalgia. And I think the appointment of Lee Grant is a good step in trying to get us back to where we hopefully belong in the Championship as a first step. I think he knows how to get out of this league. Under Kieran McKenna, they played some really exciting football. I was actually at the game when we played them in the Championship, and it was Darren Moore's best ever game in charge, to be honest. I like how he spoke in the press conference. I thought he spoke with great clarity. He spoke very articulately, and he knows what players he seems to want to bring in. I think Ryan Ledson is a great first signing bowl account, speaking or seeing online the reaction from Preston fans. That's always a good sign. And, if we get some more players in that are of that ilk, with some quality, some pace and some physicality, I think we'll be in a great place to go forward.
Hi, everyone. Having a nice pint in Slathwaite with my brother today. My thoughts on League is that I feel like it's a bit of a gamble, as any first-time manager is going to be. It's a interesting appointment. He speaks very, very well. I think a lot's going to depend on the quality of the staff that he appoints. When I think back to the first-time coach successes that we've had, I think Lee Clark, to an extent, you can call him a success. As were obviously Claude Brand and Wagner, but they had particularly good coaching setups around them. And it'd be interesting to see who Grant appoints to his staff. I think the director of football is going to be quite crucial in all of this, because I think they've got a big job to be able to manage upwards. I think a lot of the problems we can attribute to the last 2 years come from the very emotional reactions that we get from Nagel, both in terms of sort of sacking managers and also his sort of signings. He seems to react to quite a lot around fan sentiment on social media. I think if we can get a director of football that can actually shut that down a little bit, I think we're probably onto a winner. I'd like to think that our comparative financial clout to the division is probably what's going to see us through over the next year or two. But fingers crossed for Lee Grant. I hope he does well. It would be nice to see us become a bit of a breeding ground for first-time coaches at the time.
Morning, Matthew. Lee Grant then. Opinions. Bit of an unknown, obviously. No one will have known about him before his name sort of started going around. But I like what he's been saying so far. Proactive, aggressive, dominant, in teams' faces are all things that I think Huddersfield Town should be in this division, especially with the budget, top 3, 4 maybe. So those are all positive things, I think. And I'm hoping the club can back him properly and he can implement those things. Could obviously go the other way, but let's hope not. It's over to Mr. Nagel and co, I think. I think all we can do is back him, give him support he needs.
Initially, I was fairly sceptical, probably due to the fact of the managers we were linked with, most notably David Wagner, and then we eventually get someone that hasn't had a head coach or manager role before. However, since listening to his interviews, just doing some research into what he did at Ipswich and how highly Kieran McKenna and the fans rated him, I'm quite looking forward to the summer ahead, especially with the first signing, Ryan Ledson. I think he'll be a good asset to the club. We can't really see anything until we see what happens on the pitch. Come on, Town.
Hi guys, love the podcast. Always look forward to it coming out every week. On Lee Grant, I think it's going to prove to be a very, very good appointment. I was a bit like a lot of other fans when he was first being linked. He was linked for a week or so before it happened. So like saying it's a bit of a step down from some of the managers that have been linked. Whether there was any truth to any of them, we'll probably never know. But now that he's in, we've all seen his first interview. We've all seen his first press conference. He talked brilliantly. Looking into his history, he might not have any experience of being out on his own as a head coach or a manager, but he's had 3 years coaching at Ipswich. He was player coach at United for 4 years. He's been wanting to do this since he was 29. So and he's 42 now. So it's 13 years of knowing that this is what he wants to do and working towards this point. So I'm fully behind him. I'm sure you'll do another podcast on transfers, but the first signing we've made is a superb one as well. I think we can look forward to an exciting summer of business, and hopefully that promotion that we all want.
Hey, it's Jerry Hennon, your Yank friend of the pod, weighing in on Lee Grant. And maybe I'm in the minority of Huddersfield Town fans. Lee Grant is a gamble, but I'm in the mood for a gamble. Huddersfield Town's last several managerial appointments, going back to Neil Warnock before 23-24, have all been based on experience, right? We've got Darren Moore's experience. We've got Andre Breitenreiter's experience. We've got Michael Duff's experience. And even when Duff was winning, it wasn't bringing a lot of excitement to the club. I'm in the mood for excitement. I don't want the ship steadied. I want the ship to have its sails fully out, fast as we can. Let's charge forward into the future, that kind of thing. And to do that, I think it's great to hire a young manager with a lot of energy who views Huddersfield Town as the job that's going to kind of put his name on the map, the same way Wagner did, the same way Corberan did. I think Lee Grant, maybe he's that kind of guy, maybe he's not. But I think now is the time to take that kind of gamble, to push the reset button as hard as Town can push it. And so if they can get their recruitment right over the summer, I'm excited to see what Grant can do.
Hey up, Matt. Jimmy Islip here. Yeah, just on Lee Grant. So I guess I read the news about the appointment. Sort of felt a bit meh about it, but going into it with an open mind, and after hearing him being interviewed, feeling really positive about it. And I think one of my biggest takeaways was that he's like, he's been part of a winning team for quite a few seasons now, and like a winning culture. And I think that is massively missing from Huddersfield Town, obviously. And I think hopefully he can bring that mindset. As much as I quite like Michael Duff. Ultimately, he didn't win the playoff final, and he wasn't on a winning trajectory. And I think that sometimes brought some negativity to the type of football they play. So, I think it's good news.
Hello, I'm Joel Granger. You may have seen me talking and writing a few bits for Takes That Chance in the past. And Lee Grant, it's an interesting appointment, certainly a bold one from Nagel and Co. And I have to admit, when his name was first thrown into the mix, I was mortified almost. I was, Lee Grant, the ex-goalkeeper, the one who's been at Ipswich. I presumed he'd been goalkeeping coach in there. I didn't really know all too much about him. Obviously, we've all seen Ipswich's rise, but I was mortified. But honestly, after watching his interviews and reading about him and that press conference, it's no surprise that we've hired him, in my opinion. I think if I was sat in front of him doing an interview and he spoke to me like that, I'd have hired him on the spot. So, I think it's an appointment we can all be really excited about. He certainly talks the talk, and he comes from a brilliant background in a coaching perspective, really doing wonders with Ipswich's attack specifically and working under McKenna. And, we all know what Ipswich have done. So if he can replicate that sort of form at Town, we'll be on to a winner.
Afternoon, lads. Johnny here from over in Australia. Yeah, I'm relatively chuffed with Grant coming in. I think I was a little bit underwhelmed by the prospect of David Wagner coming back in the first place. Not that it probably ever was a likelihood, but I think my opinion is to let sleeping dogs lie in that respect. So I think I was against that option from the off. Lee Grant seems to interview really, really well. He's been part of a winning culture, and hopefully he can get a tune out of some of our centre forwards as well, which I think has been obviously missing for the past couple of years. He should have a pretty good little black book as well. Being associated with Man United for a while, some really well-known players there, and hopefully has got a decent little network across the footballing landscape. I'm excited to see what he can bring. I'm chuffed with Ryan Ledson. I think he's going to be a good vocal person and will set some great standards. And I'm really optimistic now about the season because I thought it could have been a little bit flat. And I think when I first heard Lee Grant's name, I was a little bit flat about it. But having heard him speak and had a bit of time to think about it and think of some of the other options, I think. Lee Grant's probably up there, so I'm excited, cautiously optimistic about the season. So up the Town.
Dan Porritt, aka Ginger Ogre. Is Lee Grant an exciting appointment? Maybe not, but it is quite an interesting one. I've seen lots suggesting that we needed a more experienced manager for this level, but we kind of had that in Moore and Duff, and neither of them worked out. So a little outside the box thinking maybe a good thing. Especially considering the squad needs a full overhaul. Grant will hopefully get backed by Nagel, and for the first time in a while, a large percentage of the squad will be his. So hopefully everyone in the squad should be a better fit for how he wants to play. I mean, obviously he's never had a managerial role before, so we'll have to wait and see how he plays. But given that he's been at Ipswich with McKenna, who likes to play a front foot attacking style of football, you'd expect it to be very similar with us. With the attacking coach down there too, which obviously bodes well for that style of play. Another thing I've seen quite a lot is that Grant clearly wants first choice, but that's not really an issue for me. This time it's all about getting the right choice and hopefully given the length of time taken to make the appointment you'd hope it would be. So all in all, quite happy with it. I suppose we'll just have to see how it goes, won't we?
Hey up, this is Graham Rayner, Town fan, comedian. In fact, I'm hosting the first comedy night at H-Town on the 19th of July at the stadium with Harriet Kemsley, who you might have seen on Last One Laughing on Amazon, headlining. Tickets are £20, and if you're quick, you can get early bird tickets at just £15. Go to gagandboneman.com. Lee Grant, what do I think of him? Well, initially I was a bit underwhelmed until I did a bit of reading up and looked at his career history. It seems like he's one of those players who, as they were coming towards the end of their career, actually prepared properly and seems to have learned from some great coaches and climbed his way up the ladder in the proper way. He's not like a Lampard, Gerrard, Rooney type who just expects to fall into a job. So I like the way he talks. His track record at Ipswich, clearly impressive. So yeah, time to get behind him. Let's see what happens. If we get the right players in, maybe we could actually have a positive season. Up the town.
I have to say the appointment of Lee Grant has got me pretty excited, and that's somewhere I didn't think I'd be after the last few years. Is it the excitement of the unknown? Quite possibly. I'm not in the camp where I like to go back to where I know from before. That doesn't hold too much excitement for me, and inevitably it quite possibly ends in tears. So I like the risk, and I hope the reward is commensurate with the risk of this appointment.
Cautious optimism is the words that I would use to analyse my feelings about Lee Grant. I've liked everything that's said so far. I think it's hard to kind of judge because we literally have no other terms of management or anything that he kind of has done before. You know, coaching, being an assistant coach is very different to being the head coach. But everything that we've heard about him so far is very positive. Hearing what he's had in interviews where he's speaking to, you know, elite level players whilst they were at Man United, like, you know, Paul Pogba, and saying, how would you manage them? Hopefully means that that's translated into, you know, good man management skills, which he again seemingly has had it whilst he was at Ipswich. He's got a lot of results from players in terms of being able to improve their attack and whatnot, had good relationships with players. So it could go either way. It could be Mark Fotheringham. He could be Carlos Corberán. I'm hoping to see some good football if it's similar to how they played at Ipswich, because Ipswich played some decent stuff. So if that is to be the case, hopefully we can see some good football. Again, yeah, cautious optimism. And I'm happy with Ryan Ledson signing. Hopefully that's a sign of things to come up the town.
Hi, it's Will here, giving my thoughts on the Lee Grant appointment for Andy Takes That Chance. Yeah, there's not a lot to go off really, but personally I'm quite excited from, you know, what I've read, his interview, his press conference. Yeah, starting to get quite excited by the appointment. He's obviously worked under Kieran McKenna as an attacking coach. And they were a team that scored, you know, hatfuls of goals for a couple of years. So, yeah, I mean, to be honest, I just want to enjoy watching Huddersfield Town play football again. And hopefully this is a good first step. I think the crucial thing is recruitment. You know, if we don't get that right, then, you know, we're going to struggle. But, you know, we've got 9 or 10 players to sign this summer, maybe more. And yeah, if we get that right, I think we're in for a good season. So yeah, fingers crossed. You know, Lee Grant is the man to take us back into the Championship.
Okay, lots of opinion on there, which is fantastic. So thank you very much for that. A couple of questions for you boys then. The budget. So we're not talking about politics, are we? People with a briefcase coming up, etc. We don't want Jake Edwards walking through to 10 Downing Street with his briefcase. But for something like this to work, the budget has to be there for Huddersfield Town to change the culture. So when you wanted to do such a radical change, so this is revolution, really, not evolution, isn't it? As they say, when you're wanting to do this, and when you've had a clear out of the squad, and you need to bring people in, there needs to be a sufficient budget there to be able to, one, make mistakes, and two, bring people in who can also bring about change as well. And by that we mean players. We need staff, coaches, etc. The budget is such an important part here, Kosi, because if we try and do this on the cheap, and I mean, we've got something a little bit later on. We're going to talk about it. One of the next questions is about the director of football and the coaching staff, etc. But Lee Grant's position, Kosi, he's coming as a manager and not a head coach, which is a slight departure. But I think people might be reading a bit too much into that than what is necessary. From me, my understanding is that the difference really is that Lee Grant is just basically going to have the final say on his own staff, like you mentioned earlier, and any players that come through the door, he will rubber stamp before they come in. That's basically how I understood the difference to be. Because you can't do this on the cheap, can you? You can't bring in a guy who's never led before, a guy who obviously needs help, and you can't just throw him into the wolves like this. The budget there needs to be able to support change sufficiently, doesn't it?
Yeah, definitely, mate. But to be fair, I think obviously reading from kind of between the lines, a lot of Kevin Nagel's messages, tweets, kind of end of season roundup, etc., and that as well. It kind of led me to believe that the budget was there. Obviously, what budget that is, who knows? And we know obviously the players that are leaving, the wage bill that's going to be freed up as well. Obviously, you guys know a little bit more than me on the financial rules and things, and what you can lose and what you can spend, etc., etc. Don't we get a little bit by that next season, Matt? You kind of bring it down if you're not. But obviously, yeah, I've kind of been looking around as well, who's come down and stuff, and you've kind of been mentioning about Cardiff, and we've been kind of chatting on our internal communications channel about maybe they're in a bit of a predicament. Plymouth obviously lost their manager to Schalke 04, so that they're in a bit of a kind of mess. So I think maybe, I mean, when you looked at kind of what's coming down, obviously you'd expect Luton to be up there. My tip for the Premier League last season. So yeah, now they're in League One. So obviously I know a lot about football. But yeah,
Can I get Pozza, mate? That time Pozza reckoned Fulham were going to finish in the top 2 when they'd already got promoted to the Premier League the year before.
I could next one to be totally different to me. Coming here and just say, God, I can't believe we're appointing this. Nagel ain't going in here. We've got an experienced manager, and we're in a mess. We haven't sold any season cards and stuff. But honestly, I don't know when this would ever be about 15 years ago. But since I've kind of got on top of my gambling addiction, my mind's trained differently to think positive. And all I can think, Matt, is obviously Nagel's been well documented, and some of the stuff still makes me cringe. We'll probably talk about Northern football later, but yeah, to me the budget seems to be there, and like you said, there's no point getting him in, Matt, if you're not going to do this revolution, because you might as well just kind of go with a bit of a journeyman who you know what you're going to get as well, who's kind of working on a limited budget. I don't know, just trying to think. Paul Warren, that sounds a bit bad, but something like Paul Warren, we might as well have got him in, mate, when he was available, but we've not. And yeah, so you know what? Once I've kind of got rid of the fear, this is kind of exciting me a little bit now, because to see what it can do. And I think the thing is for us, it's all right. Us thinking, people will get a phone call from Neil Warnock or whoever, everyone will want to play under him, etc., etc. But from what I was hearing, like with Lee Grant and his reputation, obviously part of that Ipswich coaching staff, and obviously he's learned his trade with money. I just think, what we were saying with Lee Clark back in the day as well. It's like, I just think if Lee Grant's on the phone, from what I kind of gauged and watched, read, etc., and that as well, I think you'd want to come. And Ryan Ledson probably proved for that. Obviously, you could say, well, yeah, he wasn't in and he signed without knowing who was the manager. But you're not telling me that Ryan Ledson will just come in blind. I could be wrong. He might not have known who was going to be the coach. But to me, I just think it is quite exciting. And the budget is there. But as we know, Matt, before, we've had, obviously it was low budget compared to many in the Premier League, but we had a decent budget there for us. Even maybe looking ahead to going back in Championship when we totally ballsed it up. Last year, obviously we spent nothing compared to Birmingham. So canny signings, I've seen a few people tweeting already saying, "Oh, is this how it's going to be? Just getting freebies and stuff like that as well?" Is it, Aldo? But we're not bothered. Is it, this? I think this guy could be going back to the day, mate, where canny loans, young loan players who, they'd rather not work under a dinosaur. They'd rather work under an up-and-coming coach that's got a good reputation in the game, mate. So I think we're going to be quite handy in that. But obviously, I'm all optimistic, mate, as we are now. And I think, money doesn't guarantee you. It's just about smart purchases. But it's interesting, mate. Isn't it? People say it's a Lee Clark similarity, but I don't know. It just feels. When Lee Clark came in, we knew that team were going to chuck money at it, and it was just like, and we did chuck a lot of money in it for them days, and eventually we got up under another guy. But I think the rebuild is a little bit more different now, and it is. it is good that he's got that budget there, man. But that's like I said, if he didn't have, then you might as well go with a journeyman.
Killer, what is Northern football to you?
I don't care. I just love it. I don't even know what it means. Do you know what? It's like what is it? Flint Tropics basketball team with Jackie Moon. I can't remember what the film's called. Anyway, it's Super Mega Bowl. It's just making up. That's it. It's Super Mega Bowl football, isn't it? It's fantastic. However, jokes aside, we all know what it is without being able to say what it is. So I see people taking the piss. Yet we all understand. Dean Oil gets it. David Wagner spoke of it. We like hard-working footballers. It's just what we like. And generally, you can see it. We know people that get booed even if they score goals. And I won't throw the name there. Everyone knows I would if I could. But then we've got Johnny Ogg that loses 9 out of his 10 games that he played, or whatever it is in a run, as Jerry Inan suggested earlier on. And everyone loves him still. We like hard-working footballers. We don't mind giving chances away if we're creating more chances than the other team is. We don't mind if we might not win every game, but if we're most headers in midfield, we enjoy that. And it's just kind of rough and tumble, no nonsense football. And I think that is something that resonates with fans. And when we've got it right before, like you say, we got it right under Lee Clark, which was a very different style of football than David Wagner. Absolutely. But the players on the pitch represented Town a little bit flashier, yes. In a different system, yes. But the passion couldn't have been questioned. So I just think it's that, isn't it? It's people that represent and that give all the effort while they're playing on that field. And that's as simple as it is. And that they all work together. And now we have visibly seen over these last couple of seasons, it's not been like that at all. So that's what it means to me. But I'm all in on it. I absolutely love it. I'd love more. That's what needs to be asked to Lee Grant at his next press conference. See if he can pull out a decent answer for that one. But no, Matt, that's where I sit on it. But I think we all know what it is without saying and being able to describe exactly what it is.
I think it means different things to different people. Basically, I looked at that and like most of the Leeds fans reply and want to just like everyone knows what was meant by it. And it was Lee Grant that coined it, not Kevin Nagel. I think Kevin Nagel was kind of parroting it a little bit, wasn't he?
Yeah.
And basically all he meant was essentially the type of football that people in the North enjoy more. And all that is hard work and it's dedication and commitment over skill. That's what it is, basically.
It's chance creation as well, Matt, though. I think it's chance creation. It's not, again, I know we had a few scenes where we didn't create too many goals. Even under Corberan, that football, whilst we did get to the playoff final, I still don't think we had that. I know Corberan's probably the best tactician we'll ever see as a manager at this club, other than Wagner. And you can argue who's better there, to be totally honest, seeing what Corberan's managed at Valencia. But I think even under Corberan, we didn't get that same excitement because it was a little bit different. It was very, very controlled where we didn't create many chances. So I think it's a little bit of a different than just winning as well. I think it's more about creating those chances as well, Matt.
Oh, so it's about how you play and the tempo of which you play as well and the physicality. But that's it. And I saw people purposely trying to sort of like take the piss out of it. And I just thought, do you know what? It says more about you than it does of Kevin Nagel if you're trying to not understand or misrepresent what it means, and because it was blatantly obvious to anyone who's got half a brain what it was. Let's move on to one of the final things. So, a director of football. So, a manager can only be as successful as his wraparound staff. We've ascertained that already. Lee's been given the manager moniker, which we've just mentioned. From reading between the lines, like I said earlier, it seems like he will have more of a say in the staff that he picks. And he's been part of a successful unit at Ipswich with Martin Pert and Kieran McKenna. Mark Hudson and Paul McShane are two names that have been linked to the coaching staff. Again, Town need the successful wraparound if they want to imitate what Ipswich did. Town have lacked a clear footballing direction since Kevin Nagel walked through the door, possibly since before then as well. There's been no identity on the field for a long time. Off the field, they've been doing some really good things. I don't think you can take that away from them at all. But the majority of people only really care about what's happening on the field. And if things are okay on the field, then they care what's happening off the field. It's just the way Northern football works, Killer. But we still lack this. So it's very important to me that Town sort the leadership out at board level on the footballing side, because it can't be led by Dave Threlfall-Sykes, Jake Edwards, or Kevin Nagel. That's not their job to do so. They've got other jobs that they do, and they do quite well by all accounts. Ross Wilson and Joe Savage have been the strongest links that we've seen so far. despite Kevin Nagel saying he's not liked anyone he's interviewed, which I don't buy, I'll be honest. These two are still strongly linked, and I think it needs someone like a Ross Wilson or a Chris Markham to lead the football inside of the club from a higher level. That's in terms of analysis, it's in terms of recruitment and the staffing beyond the football coaching. And Lee Grant can't do this and coach. It's not possible. Town need to make this key appointment, and the longer they take Killer and Kosi, the further behind it feels like we possibly get. And Town are making signings or trying to make signings as it is. They've got Lee Mabry there as the head of recruitment, so that is there. But where I'm going with this, Kosi, is that Lee Grant will only be successful as part of a machine, as part of a well-oiled machine. If the other parts of the machine aren't functioning correctly, then he's going to fail. And that's not what we want to see. So we really need to make sure that we're moving as quickly as possible and as correctly as possible with other areas of the club, like the director of football or head of football operations, sporting director, whatever that role is going to be or whatever it's going to look like. That needs filling quickly with the right people. Same with the other staff. The injuries, looking back at last season's injuries, have we gone through everything that we, Kevin Nagel talked about having that sort of analysis into why we got so many injuries last season. Has that been undertaken? Do we understand why we had so many injuries this season? Can we stop that from happening next season? That's something that a football person does, not Lee Grant, but a director of football leads that analysis from that point of view. Can we do that? There's a lot for one man to do here, and where I'm going with this again is because it is just there's so many elements that will make up whether this is successful. And Town have just filled one part, but they can't really take their eyes off of the other parts. Otherwise, and this does feel like a longer term project, and I just get the feeling that promotion next season isn't as important as it was under Michael Duff, where it was pretty much promotion or bust. It feels like Town are now ready to build something, and they've got one builder in place, one construction worker, if you like, but they need to get the other ones in order as well to go forward. And I think if Town were to finish top 6 next season and not get promoted, I think that would be fine for the board. Maybe not for us and not for the fans, but I think as long as Town start moving in the right direction, because basically Huddersfield Town have been sinking for a long time. We now need to make sure that we've bottomed out, and now we need to make sure that we start turning the other way on an upward trajectory, because we've been finishing lower and lower and lower season upon season. And again, Kosi, it's so important that we get the right people in to drive this forward, and it doesn't just fall on one person.
So it's a weird one, Matt, because I think that waiting for so long for a manager, but it's been a bit strange for me. But not having done that DOF in is, probably even stranger, to be honest with you, because obviously it sounds like Nagel's doing interviewing for what you've said there, mate, but the key is that, about chemistry and culture and people working with each other. What happens if you bring in a guy who's don't believe in Lee Grant, or, Lee Grant don't believe in him? Then there's a bit of an issue. So it seems a bit of a weird one for me. And, that it's not being brought in. And, I just think as well, he's only a young guy, Matt. There's so much work to do there. And like you said, that's someone else has got to be kind of working on that as well. And I'm not saying it's a bit of a worry, but you just feel there's so much work to do just for kind of one person that as well. I've got no faith in Jake Edwards, if I'm being honest with you, mate. He might have done, with the business side of it or what have you, but not for football side. Obviously, Cartwright walked the plank. He, his position was very untenable as well. So it does feel really weird. But Ross Wilson's a funny one, mate, isn't he? Because obviously he's been here before, and again, I'm not one for going back. I'm just thinking, if I'm Ross Wilson, it feel like kind of a backwards step if that's not resulting in his own club. But he's been there and done it. I get he might be out of work and need a job, but to me, I don't think that kind of works as well, Matt. So yeah, but it doesn't. It sounds like they're pretty chilled about it, to be honest with you, doesn't it? Just laying some of the questions that were popped at the press conference and stuff like that as well. So I'm not expecting anyone anytime soon, really, and that as well. And you kind of go back. Obviously, the director of football's always been in like for many years now, but before that, we never. You probably go back Mickey Buxton's days and Jacko and all that lot, but there were no one really that were overseen in them days. Whether they made the decisions, but obviously the setups in the clubs are kind of a bit different now on that as well. So, I honestly think it's one of those, Matt. If we start winning games and players are coming in, whoever's signing them and that as well, no one will care if it's director of football, a kit man or what have you. It's people are happy. And, but I'm just thinking when you kind of sat and he's thinking all this work to do. We've got a range of pre-season and games and everything, and you look at the academy setup, and it's a lot for an inexperienced coach. That's never. Oh, it's manager. We have to call him now, don't we? He's not manager, isn't for us? But it's a lot to do for one guy. But it's all about chemistry and culture and that as well. It does feel a bit weird that we've got like the manager in, and it's almost like like they said. Not that he carries as much power. You sometimes get a takeover, don't you? And then the manager kind of disappears, doesn't he, after a few weeks because it's like he's not our guy and they wait for a couple of bad results and off they go and that as well. But I'm not saying the director of football that can the coach or can the manager, but it just feels a weird way around of doing it. I remember initially I said to you, Matt, didn't I? Like, does it really matter? I was saying I want to ask that we didn't have a DOF in, but kind of thinking about it a little bit more. I think I am a little bit arsed, mate, now and that as well. So it's it's interesting, mate, but don't know.
It's not normal though, is it? The thing is this is not normal. We are 21 days away, I think, or 22 days between now and the boys coming back for pre-season training. And as of right now, we've got a manager but no staff around him. We've got a head of scouting or head of recruitment in Maybury who was here when we brought in the Dross last January under Cartwright. Okay. So the recruiting team is the same team we've had that's failed over the last few transfer windows. That's what we have right now. Plus Grant. Now, one thing I've struggled with the Grant appointment, and I might be jumping your agenda here a little bit, Matt, is that people are getting excited about him. And now looking at it, there's nothing to get excited about because nobody knows anything about him apart from a few press conferences. That's all we know, just how he speaks. You've got no idea of how much influence he had over Ipswich and the way they played. I mean, I think, was it Connor Chaplin? He said something about him on a tweet, but that's basically it. So if you've got real faith in Grant, it's from listening to him speak. That is it. There's nothing else to go on because none of us know what influence he actually had over that team. And he wasn't number one, and he wasn't even number two. It's a massive difference being a coach, stepping up to being the face of a club. And when you've got no DOF, he is the face of our footballing side of the football club. Overnight, that's happened. And it's pretty admitted, I think, more or less from most of us, that he probably wasn't even first choice, right? I know Neil's come out saying different, not entirely different to it, but you know what I mean. But it's a very different position for him to find himself in. And now I'm sick of this comparison to when McKenna went to Ipswich because this is not what happened there at Ipswich. When McKenna joined, I think the head of performance stepped up to be the head of recruitment. I can't remember his name. But the other guy within that they promoted to make that director of football kind of angle a little bit easier for his transition. He also brought in, like you say, Martin Pert, who was 46 at that point, with quite a bit of coaching experience around. McKenna had a team he brought to Ipswich with him when he went there. We don't seem to have that yet with Grant, and this is a couple of days later on. I know we've only announced him recently, but at the same part, McKenna had his team in place. We don't have it, and it doesn't feel to me that Lee Grant has an existing team to bring. And that's a big warning sign for me, because when you're looking back at inexperienced managers that have been given a big job for the first time, generally, they surround themselves with experience, with all the guys, your Fazakalis, your Yoriths, to try and bring that little bit of knowledge. And now maybe that's going to happen the next couple of days. But as of where we stand today, that's not there. So when you're coming down to recruitment again, 21, 22 days before guys are back in for pre-season, and how many times have we heard that it's really important that all the guys are in for day one because you're learning a new system. You need them here. We don't have a centre-back. Barbaro Spencer and Bolker, who obviously has made a paper mache at this point. So we've got so many people to bring in, yet the recruitment team's not there the new recruitment team to play the new way we want isn't there, right? We were a 4-2-3-1 club that went to a 3-5-2 club last year. Are we going to go back to a 4-2-3-1? And if we are all the analysis we've done up until now not useful anymore because we don't need wing back? There's so many questions to ask. There's so many answers to find. And we are, what, weeks away? Yeah, Emily's 4 weeks yesterday, the first game of our pre-season. And as of right now, it feels like we're so far behind the eight ball, like you say, Matt, for any type of promotion run this year. Already, I'm thinking to myself, playoffs are a massive achievement for this club because there are so many issues. I liken our playing squad at the moment to a car that has no engine. We've got a few wheels, we might have a few seat belts and an odd seat, but there's nothing to drive it. There's no engine, there's nothing in there just yet. And now we've patched it a little bit with Grant. Maybe he's fantastic and maybe it works out. I really, really, really hope so. But at the moment, it's a massive gamble and he's supported by no one from what we can see that's different from what we've had before. And it's a really big worry, Matt. So the budget is important, as a quick one going back there, because there's so many holes to fill. But who's spending it unless it's just Grant on his own as of today? But I do understand the switch to that, by the way. Now, we had a disconnect in January about Duff getting players he didn't particularly want for the system he played. We all know that, in that we brought Charles in and Taylor, two small strikers that might work out fantastic for us. But for what we needed from January to the end of the season, it wasn't that. There was a disconnect between Cartwright and Duff, and that's what happened. Doing it this way, giving Grant a little bit more say, kind of gets rid of that disconnect. And that shows Nagel is listening and he's learning and he's trying to adapt to a different way. But I just feel like there's so many people missing as of today that I can't get excited just yet for the new season because, again, Ipswich, there was a squad, there was a coaching staff that kind of built around McKenna and got it going. And I feel we're so far away from it that it's going to be busy this week. The club have to be busy this week getting the right people in. And if it isn't a DOF, that's okay if you get a good enough coaching team and other people in to help. But it feels like there's still so many gaps when it comes to the playing side compared to the marketing and communication side and the sales side. There seems to be massive. There are loads of people coming in every 2 seconds. But when it comes to the playing staff and the supporting staff, we seem to be very, very behind where we should be at this point in pre-season.
Yeah, I mean, Lee Grant seemed to indicate that he would have a bit of a say, didn't he, in the right people. That it's got to be the right people that come in both in terms of the director of football and the structure of the coaching team, and it looks like it'll be his decision. I mean, Kieran McKenna was different because he went in December to Ipswich, so there were league matches on the horizon, so the need to get everybody in immediately was probably, incredibly important, as it is for Town. But like I say, we've heard two names, haven't we? Paul McShane, who looks way too much like Adrian Durham for my liking. He's been linked. He's been coaching at Manchester United, so it's obviously where Lee Grant's crossed paths with him before. I'm not. I'll be honest. I'm not overly worried about experience in coaching. If they've got a lot of, if they've got a playing career which is full of experience as well, and you need different people. And one thing I liked about Lee Grant was he mentioned he likes people to challenge him rather than just. I think one thing which was really good is usually when someone gets a job as a manager, they ring the best mates and get them all in. And he didn't want to do that. He wanted to bring people in who would challenge him, challenge his thought process rather than just constantly agree with him, which is great because Town have been accused recently of having too many yes men at the club. And now we're moving towards people challenging the manager, which sounds a lot healthier if it's what the manager wants. So I'm comfortable with the way that things are sounding, but like Killer says, things have got to start moving quite quickly in that. I do worry about the director of football approach at the minute. I do think it's important, not just on the field, but I think as a club in general. I think the footballing side of things has been poorly, not very well run over the last couple of years, and that needs to be better. And for me, I would be big on someone like Ross Wilson coming back and doing that. When he was here before, he was head of football operations, a smaller role. If he was to come back, it would probably be, and this is just me guessing, but I would imagine to bring him out of Nottingham Forest, where they're going to be in Europe next year, it would take a big role and a big say to be able to do that. So him potentially coming would be exciting, and it would show genuine progress of what Huddersfield Town are making. I think that would be a fantastic appointment. But the last thing we've got is basically just on the players and how who might benefit from this change in approach. And Killer, I think there's a couple that will benefit from this change in management and the change of approach. Freddie Ladapo, who knows? He scored. He almost scored 20 goals. I think was it 19? Was it he got at Ipswich when Lee Grant was the attacking manager? But I think a little bit more serious. I think Ben Wiles would be happier because I think there are comparisons between Ben Wiles and Connor Chaplin to a point within the way that they play. You look at the way Ipswich played in terms of attacking fullbacks. Both fullbacks got a lot of assists. So someone like Ruben Ruskin, Mikael Miller would I think benefit from that kind of system as well. And if there are 3 strikers up there closer to the central guy, then the issues around Joe Taylor not having the support, Dion Charles not having the support, lessen a lot more. So I think it would be better for those guys as well. On the other side of things, you kind of look at it and say, right, if Town, the way that Ipswich played was essentially everything evolved around that double pivot in midfield. The two central midfielders, everything went through them. Those 2 central midfielders needed to be fit. They needed to be able to get up and down, and they needed to be able to drive through midfield. And so you can see where Ryan Ledson fits in immediately. There may be a slight worry about people like Herbie Kane. His fitness levels haven't really been good enough. Would they be good enough for a league grant? I don't know, but they can improve. Anthony Evans, you will maybe have a question mark how he would fit in. Lasse Sorensen is the other one. He came for what was it, 300-400 grand last summer. If we go back to 4-2-3-1 on the pivot, then he struggles. He struggles to make an impact in this side, and that's something that they're going to have to sort of think about. But Lee Grant is someone who improves, or at Ipswich they improve players. So I think there are players there, Killer, Kosi, who will benefit from this, but I think there will be casualties of it as well. And I don't think people should look to or be too upset with that when it happens, because things need to move organically in the right direction.
It's a clean start for everybody, Matt, isn't it? But honestly, we've got so many misfiring departments. I think it's easier than picking out individuals. You're just looking, like you say, midfield just didn't work this season. It can't be as bad this year as it was last season. The strikers from January onwards might as well not bother playing. Honestly, they were atrocious entirely. The biggest thing I'm most interested in looking at, Matt, though, is the transition all of a sudden again from using wing backs and like Mikael Miller and Sorensen, who was never really a wing back anyway, and trying to put them back into more regimented fullback roles. So there's so many different parts. But Matt, the biggest question I think going into this season from this point is find enough people to play centre back, but also who's going to play in goal, because most modern teams that do well play a little bit around at the back by the goalkeeper. And as of now, Matt, we've got no idea who even the number one's going to be. I think all things were looking like it was not going to be Lee Nichols and that he'd have been on his way. But then Chappers had a bit of a struggle at the end of the season, and I don't know how that's going to go. There's so many different departments, but I don't actually think you can point anybody out and say they finished the season really, really well. So I'm expecting an improvement across the board, because those last 10 games, honestly, the last Worthington spell, the Crawley game, and were Mansfield away? Was that the other one in that little run that wasn't too bad? I can't remember which one it was. Whichever one it was awful. And I think to a man, they looked all atrocious, like they'd never played football before, because it looked like the instruction given to them wasn't strong enough, or wasn't clear enough, or wasn't structured enough, so they looked lost, or they couldn't be asked. Could be as simple as that. But again, with Grant, he's got a clean slate, and I think a simpler way to play football, a 4-2-3-1, everyone kind of understands their own roles in it, will improve a lot of players, and we can just build on that going forward. But where the wing backs transition, Matt, into the new system would be quite interesting, because Ruskin came into most of us as a defensive kind of wing back, and he ended up playing as a wide in the front three. Maybe that's an option again on the other side with Sorensen. I don't really know. But there's opportunities now for everybody to try and put a bit of a performance in, and maybe Tom Upenda could be somebody, Matt, who might be given a little bit more of a role in that double pivot, if that's what we're looking at, because he's kind of fits into that a little bit more than the 10 role that we'd expect from somebody like Ben Wiles or even Anthony Evans if he's been given it. Because do you know what, Matt? I'm going back into Evans and Wiles in midfield partnership here, and I can't do that, Matt. I can't visit that point. I'm having to move on.
It's not going to happen. I'm basically, at the minute, I'm writing a number of articles on the squad and how it might fit together. I'm just almost ready to release my goalkeeping one, so I'm not going to weigh in on Nichols or Chapman just yet. But basically, a spoiler for that is neither of them is my answer in that one. One I don't think is near good enough, and the other one I don't think stylistically is right. So there we go. There's a spoiler from the article. Cos, any final words of wisdom that you wish to partake on Lee Grant, other than obviously getting behind the guy? He deserves a chance, doesn't he, to for Town fans to get behind him first before we all pile in on him and tell him he's useless?
Yeah, for me, mate, I said it on the tweet the other day, but I want to wake up on a Saturday, mate, or a Tuesday or Wednesday, whenever we're playing this game, and I want to be excited to go watch it. So I want to wake up and think, get in there, Town are playing. I want to be there. I want to be at the ground. I can't wait. I'm going to go in there early. I want to get that ticket for Mansfield away or wherever it is and stuff like that. So I've not felt that for some time. The style of football is a big thing for me, Matt. It's interesting as you say earlier on there, you were saying like it won't be the worst thing in the world if we, I don't know, got in the place, didn't make it up. But for me, that'd all be kind of, and it sounds a bit acceptable, like we're, having another year of League One football. But I just want to be entertained, Matt. If I'm enjoying my Saturday, mate, going out and watching Huddersfield Town or telling people, you know what, Huddersfield Town play some right football now. That's what I want. And I was a big Michael Duff fan and dealt a bad end of cards, and obviously he kind of petered out horribly at the end of that as well. But I won't lie, it was pretty dull. Certainly even kind of some of the the winning streaks we had, you can hardly say we were excited. But that's what I want, and I get it was interesting what he was saying on was it Thursday when he was appointed. I can't remember now. Was it Thursday, Wednesday? But he was mentioning that he's not a possession-based man, which is music to my ears because I think. Yeah, sometimes you see these possession-based stats and 2 shots on target, something like that as well. That's not for me. But he was saying he wants to be like an imposing team that, people you want to know that we're about. Which brings us obviously onto Ryan Ledson, who's not shy of the tackle, shall we say. But yeah, I just want to see some exciting football, Matt. And I know it's results and getting out of the division and stuff like that as well. But I don't know if it's just getting older and a bit mellow, but I'd love to, even going back to Pilks, Roberts, all that lot, quite a lot of years ago now. But I was excited to watch Huddersfield Town then, mate. And obviously the Bruce team we were talking about and that as well. God bless him, Marcus Stewart. Obviously you've done the podcast with and that as well. That were exciting football for me, Matt. Enjoying it. Paul Dalton steaming down the wing. People like that. People to get up off his seat and stuff like that as well. And yeah, I know, winning football and stuff. But it just proved last year, Matt, 16 games unbeaten and nobody were excited, mate. No one were asked about Huddersfield Town. People were going because there were new grounds to go to. They weren't going really because they wanted to be entertained. And there's some bold statements from Lee Grant, and he's always going to say that. Says my team is going to entertain and things like that as well. So for me, yeah, it's just having that. But we're having that chance to implement that new style, Matt, by bringing in these players that are going to fit the system and stuff like that as well. Where unfortunately, Duff, Brighton, Wright, they get people long before that have had to kind of just deal with what they've got and get the best out of a bad bunch, which Warnock did, obviously, for them 8 games or 10 games, whatever it was again, and that as well. So this is the chance to get excited. And word of mouth, Matt, we're going on about season cards, and there's obviously these screenshots doing around of all these empty seats and things, and it's looking pretty grim, isn't it? But it won't take long, mate, for a few games early on, and people see there's a bit of pressure in there. But I'd say hit the ground running because, like what Killer says, it sounds like we're miles off appointing what we need to and get people in and have a good pre-season and stuff. But I think your eyes tell you what you need to know, mate. And we knew when David Wagner came in that we were onto something, and we've seen it before. Back in the Great Escape with Peter Jackson, we saw early on we were on his way, to something and that as well. And Lee Clark, that stuff were exciting early on, Matt. All right, he ended it in kind of tepid end in the end, and he got moved on. But there has been moments where you've kind of seen the project and kind of seen it pan out. So yeah, it does. It excites me. It's a bit like nervous that we've so many kind of missing pieces in the jigsaw. But like you say, Killer, hopefully kind of as the weeks go by and that's where we kind of fill what we need to fill. But no pressure, mate. I just want 100 goals, 100 points, promotion straight back up, the stadium rocking. Let's get his first automatic for how many years is it? God, count, is it 40 years? But just I just want to be telling people I'm when I got obviously I'm at York now with cricket and people would you support? I'm like Huddersfield Town. Before I was like Huddersfield Town, and you should always be proud of your support. They've had a great season, didn't get up in the playoffs, but they're proud to be York City again, mate, because they played really good football in that Inchwood. They didn't get up, but they enjoyed their Saturdays, mate, and they played some great football, and they'll be renewing the season cards on the big one again. I want that back at Huddersfield Town, mate. However that looks at the end, and I've gone on. You want to ask me a quick question about 8 minutes later? I'm still going on, but yeah, what I'm trying to tell you is, mate, I want to be excited for Huddersfield Town again, and from obviously, like I said, Killer, just a few interviews, and hopefully he's had a good chat with Mourinho, etc. But he has. There's not. Let's not beat around the bush. There's big split opinion on this, but there's nothing like evidence in front of your own eyes that will counter the opinion results. And obviously, if we beat Emily 8-1, the season cards will be flying out the window, and you're going to be there, Killer, aren't you, mate? You've got your ticket, haven't you?
I'm there. I'm keen, mate. I can't wait. I love watching football. I'd watch any style of football, and I like this moment where you don't actually know what kind of football we're going to play because no one's got a clue. We ain't got a clue, but I'm loving that positivity that Town fans. That's how desperate we are as a fan base. A guy with no record of coaching a first team anywhere has come in, and half of us are getting right excited, and I absolutely love it. And I'll be there, flags out, waving like Pozza. I'll be fully embraced in my trip up to Emily from my house.
Usman Dembele, Guillaume Charles, Ballon d'Or. Next year, there'll be shortlisted them two. It'll be a battle between them two, mate. You heard it here first.
Before we go into the realms of insanity, aren't we? But yep, so I think that's all we've got time for this week. So remember to sign up for the Patreon, www.takesthatchance.com, and you will see on there, you can sign up for free. And there's an interview that we've done with Marcus Stewart, which is only available at the moment via Patreon. So remember, sign up if you want to listen to an interview with an absolutely brilliant former player and a brilliant guy in Marcus Stewart.
Matt, and also, just before you go, Jerry Murphy, mate, sad news. What a great guy. Unbelievable that Leeds away, mate. And the number of times he stepped in and he just seemed to conjure some results. And I know some people who played under him as juniors and things like that back in the day and loved the guy. Terrible, sad news. And respect to his family and friends. And he knew everyone, mate. Every single junior club in the land, mate. Everyone seems to know Jerry Murphy. So gutting news to hear that. And respect to him and his family and all the best.
There's a team that is dear to its followers. The colours are bright blue and white. They're a team of renown, and they're the pride of the town. And the game of football is their delight. And all the while upon the field of play, thousands loudly cheer them on the way. Often you can hear them say, who can beat the town today? And then the bells will ring so merrily, and every goal shall be a memory. So town, play up and bring that cup back to Huddersfield. So town, play up and bring the cup back to Huddersfield.